Welcome back to Howling Around. Today, I want to talk about the dreaded body count because it's something that comes up constantly on YouTube and podcasts and social media, and it's almost always framed in very absolute terms. And I think the way it is presented to us, especially to men, that it is, pretty wrong the way it is presented. So I think this episode is going to be pretty interesting, really. And we start with the claim that we hear over and over again, and that is that women, because it's usually the women, because men were perfect, it's usually that women with a higher number of sexual partners are bad at, pair bonding, and they are bad at commitment, and they are incapable of forming healthy long term relationships. And this is often presented as scientific fact, backed by quote unquote research, and stated with a lot of confidence. I do have to say that, these guys presenting it are confident as hell. And if you hear that message enough times, it's normal to start wondering whether it is actually true or whether it is exaggerated, biased, or ideologically driven. So let's slow down a little bit and talk about what the research actually does and doesn't say. Now, first of all, yes, there are studies that show correlations between a higher number of sexual partners and things like divorce rates or lower reported relationship stability. That part is usually real. Where the conversation immediately goes wrong is how those findings are interpreted and presented to you. Correlation is not the same thing as causation, and that distinction is almost completely ignored in online discussions, and that is pretty sad. Those studies do not show that having more sexual partners causes a woman to lose the ability to bond or commit, or men for that matter. They show that certain patterns tend to appear together. Things like impulsivity, novelty seeking, avoidant attachment styles, unstable environments, or chaotic life phases often correlate with both higher partner counts and less stable long term relationships later on. That means the number itself, the body count itself, it's not the mechanism, but it's a signal. It shouldn't be a sentence. Another issue is that, the pair bonding is often used very loosely online. In scientific terms, pair bonding is not something that gets permanently damaged by sexual experience. Human bonding is shaped by attachment, emotional regulation, trust, vulnerability, and, consistency over time. None of those things disappear because someone had multiple partners or, a lot of partners, a high body count, whatever you want to call it. Someone can have a low body count and still be terrible at intimacy or dealing with conflict or, um, being committed. And someone with a high body count can later form really stable and healthy relationships. From my experience, I've been, on both sides, with women that were terrible at being in a relationship but had low body counts, and women who were really good at being in a relationship but had high body counts. So both of those things happen all the time in real life, even if they don't fit, into the online narratives, because that's what it really is. Context also matters far more than we like to admit. A woman who had several partners during a short, unstable phase of her life is not the same as someone who spent her entire adult life avoiding emotional closeness through, casual sex. Those two situations often get lumped together because large studies cannot account for individual nuance. So, what tends to happen online is that body count gets turned into a moral scoring system. It stops being about compatibility or values and it becomes about labeling women as damaged or unworthy. And I think that's where the conversation stops being useful. I think that's a pretty stupid thing to do. There's also a clear double standard in how this topic is discussed. Many of the same voices that harshly criticize women for sexual history celebrate men for doing the same shit, while claiming it has no, psychological impact on men, but apparently it has a huge psychological impact on women. And that inconsistency alone should make you cautious about the conclusions that are being pushed. None of this means sexual history is irrelevant. I mean, it is relevant. It is completely reasonable to care about values, lifestyle alignment, and how someone has approached intimacy in the past. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm saying it is relevant, and I'm saying, yeah, you're perfectly okay in, taking that into account in whether you want to date a woman or not. Preferences are allowed. If someone's past doesn't align with what you are looking for in a long-term partner, that's a compatibility issue. It's definitely not insecurity. What doesn't hold up is the idea that there is a universal number after which a woman becomes incapable of bonding or committing. That's complete nonsense, and research does not support that claim whatsoever. And, framing it in such a way, we strip away context and individuality and responsibility, and that's not a good thing. If you actually want to assess whether a woman is capable of a healthy relationship, there are much stronger indicators to look at, I think. And that is, how do they talk about their past relationships? Do they take accountability? Are they consistent? And can they handle conflict without shutting down or escalating the conflict? Are they emotionally stable in the present? Those things matter far more than a number you can't fully interpret it anyway. And it's also a number that, well, we can lie about. So, to be honest, I can say whatever I want, she can say whatever she wants, and, well, we don't really know whether it is true or not. So, we need to look at, other indicators to figure out whether that woman or that guy is a good fit for us. So when you hear people confidently say that women with higher body counts are incapable of pair bonding or forming relationships, it's worth remembering that this is an oversimplification. It's often emotionally charged, selectively framed, and presented as science without respecting what the research actually shows. If something sounds absolute, even angry and clean cut, it is usually not the full story. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.